right, people. This is Brushy Mountain Penitentiary up here in East Tennessee, right near Frozen Head State Park. And what you see behind me is Brushy Mountain, of course, the penitentiary, the front door. And originally, when this place opened in 1896, it didn't look like this. It was wooden. And the prisoners they brought here were ones that committed petty crimes. They were between the ages of like 17 and 25. They were young men. And the reason why is because up in these mountains there's coal mines. And so these prisoners that were brought here were taken to the coal mines, and they would work 12-hour shifts, and it was very brutal, and it was a means of free labor. And because this prison was originally wooden, it was a big fear of it burning down. So they built what you see behind me out of the rock quarry that's out of over here in the mountains. But yeah, it's been open for 113 years, 1896 to 2009 when they closed it down. So we're gonna go in the front door and take a look. Just beware, it's kind of eerie.
This prison makes it.
Yeah, what once started as a minor crimes turned into major crimes penitentiary where the most violent people were housed. But here we go.
The worst of the worst.
Yeah, it was called the end of the line. That's, see right there. They also do paranormal tours. But here's like the front office.
Hello.
Hi.
Made it back in?
Yeah, and we're gonna do our own thing.
That's fine.
Yep, thanks.
You're welcome.
Look at this. I mean, just walking in the front door is just like really eerie. Sorry. And this is the warden's office, and administration was over here.
This is very eerie. This is spooky, tell you the truth. I ain't gonna
Central
lie.
control. All the keys. All the bars. Prisoner intake and visitor shakedown. Even the visitors had to go through a big search. Here we go. So remember I was talking about how the prisoners, when it first opened, they worked the coal mines, and as you can see back there. But right here, this was actually a whipping post. The prisoners had a quota, and if they didn't meet the quota, they were put on this whipping post, a leather strap attached to the end of a bat, and they were whipped with welts because they didn't meet the quota. Whippings officially were outlawed in Brushy in 1965 when the warden declared the act to be inhumane. But we're gonna go inside this building right here. Here we go. Found some actual cells. Look at this, it's rusted and peeling. Line up many stories. Crazy. And Originally, there was 6 beds in each cell, and they would rotate them out because the population got too big. And so while some were working in the coal mines, the others were resting, then the ones that were resting were sent to work in the coal mines, so they swapped out. But yeah. And here's on the end is a shower. The miners rotated shift 12 hours on, 12 hours off, so the jail cells could be double booked. And here it is when it was newly built in the late 1930s. And here's actually a picture of the original wooden structure. All right, let's move on. And we were told that actually the inmates cut their other inmates' hair. And you can see that little window in the back was actually the warden's office back there to hand the scissors and grooming tools, I guess, back to the warden. Another shower. More cells. I think there's like 4 floors. So we were told this cell right here, number 28, is where James Earl Ray stayed. He was the one that shot and killed Martin Luther King, supposedly. It's a long story to that, but that's what he was in prison for. And this was his cell. Man. And behind me is actually a picture of James Earl Ray. He was locked up in Brushy, spending time inside cell number 28. He initially pleaded guilty to shoot Martin Luther King. He later recanted it, and despite several escape attempts, which led to a massive FBI hunt in 1977, earning him D-block isolation, which we'll get to, and it added years to his sentence. Otherwise, he was a pretty model prisoner. It says he was stabbed 22 times by 4 black inmates. The blacks and whites were definitely separated here. And he managed to survive. When he left Brushy Mountain, he went to Nashville Correctional Hospital. And he died in April 1998. Mendenhall, a long-haul trucker from Indiana, was known for preying on red-headed prostitutes at truck stops across the U.S. and was suspected in the unsolved red-headed murders, convicted of 2 murders and plotting to pay $15,000 to fellow inmates to kill witnesses on the outside. He was given 2 life sentences. He was convicted of kidnapping and rape, sentenced to 56 years in prison. claiming insanity for multiple personality disorders. Prosecutors say he got away with murdering 4 prostitutes whose bodies he dumped near the Knoxville Zoo where he worked. Visiting psychics claim these cell walls speak of a man who favored redheads and another soul connected to dogs and zoo animals.
That's
Hence
crazy.
the name Zoo Man,
Zoo man.
an infamous inmate.
Yeah, buddy.
And also right here, there was actually a deer that fell over the wall, and the inmates took care of him and nursed him back to health. And he ended up living here, this deer, for a few years.
Geronimo.
Geronimo.
Yeah, Geronimo.
And he felt safe. It's crazy how a human being will kill another human being, but they're so protective of animals. Aww. He was reportedly found napping in a prison cell once, even dined in the cafeteria. It was said the guards would never dream of releasing him back into the wild because the inmates would likely riot in protest. All right, let's continue on. Found James Earl Ray's cell and another serial killer.
So, I didn't find the hospital. She's mentioned the hospital.
It might be closed up. I mean, they don't have all of it open. The Visitation Gallery. Beginning in 1965, the Visitation Room also served as Brushy Mountain's first education program classroom. Illiterate inmates were chosen by the warden, who is a former college football coach and teacher, to be taught by educational director and future warden Stony Lane. No contact visitation. Visitor guidelines. Visitation privileges were only given to well-behaved inmates. Subject to the warden's discretion, prisoners were under investigation for any behavioral issues were denied. Model inmates were allowed visitation once a week. Early on, glass partitions prevented physical contact, but when later removed, upwards of 20 inmates sat side by side across from loved ones at tables. Initially, max security offenders were forbidden to have visitation rights, but those with good behavior records were eventually allowed 1-hour non-contact video conference sessions. Here's a guard station. Minimal contact with the prisoners, these little bitty windows, just big enough for a hand. And you can see the 2 holes up here, which were Gibson put their guns through. But over here is actually the cafeteria, is where we're going to be headed next. Here we are, we're entering the cafeteria. And this artwork is actually done by Tim Cross, and I believe he was an inmate here. But here's the cafeteria. A lot of bloodshed was done in here. There's the guards room window. Murder and mayhem, see? It got so bad the kitchen tools had to be painted on the wall so they knew nothing was missing.
You going to tell them about the story of the good caskets? Huh? And they
It's just this. Oh, but look at this. Surprised they just don't clean it up a little bit. Sweep up this drywall, I guess, that's falling down. Going down the chow line. Oh, so neat. But not. And over here is, thought was a pretty interesting story. The Great Escape Guru. Many attempts have been made at escaping, but they were caught. But in 1970, this man was serving a 318-year sentence for kidnapping and murder. He was looking for a way out of the prison. He practiced yoga. He contorted his body. He was a small guy anyways. He was about 130 pounds, 5'6", but he contorted his body to fit in a box. And they wrote on the box, 153 pounds of roast beef. He was placed among food on a flatbed truck. Once on the highway, he used his shoulder to bust open the box and deftly tumbled off the truck to freedom. Unfortunately, he had been spotted by an off-duty prison guard out rabbit hunting and was soon back in Brushy facing time in the hole. A lot of death in this penitentiary. A lot of death.
It is, but
Yeah. The warden allowed the men to come help at night after dinner. They initially cleaned walls, then went on to draw sketches. Okay? We love the animals, but not the humans. All right, let's go this way. Too close. Racial tensions. The blacks and whites were separated. Another shower. Much narrower. More cells. Correspondence and contraband. A glimpse of the outside world came in the form of mail. All income and outgoing correspondence was delivered by this cell block card, and each parcel was marked with the prisoner's ID number. Despite this process, more than a few contained contraband, since each piece was opened and checked, and it took genius to conceal nefarious items. A hollowed-out Bible encasing a gun, shoes lined with shanks, and drug needles. X-ray machines and other devices would identify the presence of firearms and cell phones. But they have some examples of that down in the museum, which we'll get to. Here's the gymnasium, which right there was the whipping post. But we're going to take a quick peek inside this gymnasium. It's just your typical basketball court, but they would actually, when they had an overflow of inmates, they would actually just kind of bed down on the floor in here. We'll take a quick peek. Sports and takedowns, see? Overflow. Notice there's like a lot of basketball must have been very popular and a favorite here as far as exercise and free time, I guess. They also had some minimum security here as well. Wasn't 100% of the worst of the worst, but what is this? It's like a maze. There's just so many freaking walls and halls, and I'm not sure. Electricity. What do you think this room was? I don't think it was a locker room. I don't know.
It might be part of the commissary.
No, I don't think it's the commissary. I don't think it would have been this big. So I don't see any signs explaining. So we left the gymnasium over here, and then we're gonna come in here, and this is the commissary. This is where prisoners could buy toiletries, snacks. This mailbox. Here's the windows. Guess where they paid and picked up? Right here. Order up. Convicts were allowed to visit the prison commissary each week. Maximum minimum security prisoners had separate designated commissary windows. Ooh. And if the prison was on lockdown, commissary goods were then delivered to maximum security inmate cells. Money earned working inside Brushy, which wasn't much, along with funds sent from family members. The money was put on their accounts, and they could purchase things like shampoo, candy, instant coffee, and even cigarettes. But wow, notice the window difference. 2 different windows. Minimum security and maximum security. Donald Kaler, one of the 6 infamous inmates who jumped the wall with James Earl Ray in their notorious escape in 1977. Amazingly, he wasn't the only Kaler determined to bust out of Brushy. Donald's brother, Frankie, siblings in here, devised his own clever escape plot, and it almost succeeded. Donning a officer's uniform that he had scored from laundry, Kaler managed to shimmy his 130-pound 5'6" frame past the first trapdoor gate and through the small commissary window. Patiently waiting an hour for the next guard shift change, he slipped on a pair of shades and pretended to read the newspaper while quietly filing out with a group of guards. Kaler managed to make it outside the maximum security gate before a guard recognized him. He was rewarded for his effort with a stint in the hole. Extra time in the slammer. And so we're leaving the commissary, and right here is D block, where the most violent and aggressive were housed. Maximum security. Built in 1957, D Block was used as isolation cell quarters for the prisoners' most difficult and deadly criminals, dubbed the New Hole, after the old hole built under the laundry was shut down in the 1960s. Prisoners were stripped of all privileges and possessions except for their uniforms and bedding. D Block was not just a hole, just a smaller version of A and B blocks, which 4 walks housing 8 single cells on each walk. The block had triple locks to prevent access to the other 3 walks. Despite the high security measures, D Block remained a constant site of violence and bloodshed until the new high security annex building opened on the hill in 1989, which is that right there. That smooth cement building right there was the new D Block. But let's go take a peek. When D Block ain't enough, 32 solitary cells weren't enough for first-degree murderers and violence. Danger on D Block. Oh, wow. And there we go. I'm guessing this was probably a guard's room. D Block. Man, I don't know if you could see in there, but it's small and narrow. These must be the cells. It's a sink. And you notice they have more than just the bars. They have this right here. And that was because they would throw things. So they put this so nothing could get through, and you can just use your imagination to what they would throw. But look how small. And sometimes generally one, but sometimes 2 people would be imprisoned here. Which 2 probably wasn't a good idea, because if you're that violent, they'll probably end up killing their bunk buddy. Man. And they were in here. They were allowed 1 hour outside their cell. 1 hour. And they were put in the dog run. And here's
Here's the dog run.
yeah. Had a little bit of outdoor daylight, but it's overgrown. But it was just a narrow cell where they could just kind of go in there and pace, do sit-ups, push-ups, get a little bit of daylight. But they only got 1 hour. Then they were brought to their cell. And I'm assuming they were brought their food. That's what these were. Madness. So he came out of D Block, and this was the new one that was built in the late 80s to house more of the most violent and criminal folks. But this one's locked up, so you really can't go in there and do tours of this one. But and this wall that goes around Brushy Mountain is the prisoners were allowed to spend time out here in the courtyard, but you actually couldn't even get 10 foot near the wall. They'd have been electrocuted. But here's the back side of the dog run. Let's take a peek inside. Let's walk around. And here's the front of D block. But right next to it is the dog run. D block meant solitary confinement without privileges of interaction with any others. They were brought their meals and they ate in their cells. These were very incredibly violent, dangerous, and people who tried to escape. Most spent months, if not years, locked in one of these 32 cells for 23 hours a day with only 1 hour of exercise allowed in solitary outdoor cage. Inmates could turn off the light bulb in their cell for some shut-eye, but the walk's overhead lighting stayed on 24/7 and sleep was hard to come by. Lenient guards let prisoners hang bed sheets as barriers to help them rest, but mercy was rare in the new hole. Door. Wow. But yeah. One hour in here. Not much room. Know what you would do in here. Push-ups, sit-ups, pace, a little bit of sunlight. Watch your fellow inmates play out here in the courtyard. Guard tower right there in the corner. Man, so sad. What a life. Because most of these people here, it was life. It wasn't just a year or two. Man. But here's the window we looked out of. They said these cells were double booked because they were working the coal mines. And they were in 12-hour shifts. So 3 would be in here in their cell, and then another 3 would be out working, and then they would swap when their 12-hour shift was up. But I think they closed the coal mines down in what, 67, 68?
Yeah,
something?
65, 68.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool because some of these cells, take your time and walk through them. There's, look at all the tick marks. Somebody was counting down their days. That's pretty cool. Not cool, but a little bit of artifact. And then this one, and they were supposedly, if you went to church and changed your ways, that it showed up good on your record, which gave you like more privileges or early release time. But yeah, somebody drew a picture of Jesus on this cell. Man, can you imagine just living in this little bitty space? I don't know. I mean, you only get one life, and do you really want to spend it here? Crazy.
That's why they put the mesh up.
Yeah.
They was throwing people over the top. They'd get a fight out there and they'd be wanting to throw them off. Plus they was throwing feces and stuff.
Yeah. Gross.
Yeah, not too much.
So this building here, back in the courtyard, is a museum. It's actually the laundry room. The federal government report on nation's prisons reprimanded Brushy for its treatment of prisoners mining coal. They were afforded showers and 60 stalled bathhouses. They were never provided towels. The government felt this was cruel, particularly for miners who were constantly covered in dirt and coal. And without towels, it was no small task cleaning hundreds of uniforms from working 12 plus hours. The infamous James Earl Ray worked in the laundry and reportedly grew a watermelon patch that he tended out back. So yeah, I didn't mention it, but in the cafeteria, this was actually, they had a farm here and they actually grew their own food. So it was self-sufficient, the cafeteria was. But over here, tour continues this way. The yellow arrows. We're going down to the hole. Now we've all heard that term. Someone tries to escape, tries to kill, whatever, incites a riot. They throw them in the hole. But over here is the hole. Hell on earth, they say. When Brushy opened in 1896, the hole housed disobedient and dangerous inmates for days, weeks, even months at a time. The hole wasn't just about solitary confinement. It was far worse. There was a thing called suspension torture, tied by their thumbs to pulley cords hanging from the ceiling, toes barely touching, for up to 30 minutes. This went on until 1905, so it didn't last very long, when the practice was deemed inhumane. But there was no light in here. It was dark 24/7, and they were only given a mattress and 2 buckets, one with fresh water and one to go to the bathroom in. Look at how small. And this door. And we were told there was no bunks in here. They just put them in here for whatever reason, but generally it was one person. And look how farther down we get, it gets darker and darker. No light. Yeah, well, there's only 4 cells. I'm sure there was more.
Oh, you wouldn't want to be in it.
No, but
But if you acted up.
if this place had like 1,000 prisoners and there's only 4 whole cells, I'm sure there was more, but you get a feel anyways what the hole was. Just like this ain't no sunshine, and you would lose your vision because it was just so dark, never saw daylight. Prisoners would lose their vision within days. Upon release, a fellow inmate would be assigned as a guide until their sight returned, usually within a week's time. The extreme physical, mental, and emotional effects of solitary confinement in such dire conditions reportedly weighed heavily on the warden. One of the wardens, Joe Freitag. In fact, it was said Warden Freitag would visit prisoners in the middle of the night to check on their well-being, though not nearly soon enough for many, as suffering a man. The old hole was finally shut down in the 1960s. Next, we're going to go to the see some artifacts. That's pretty cool. museum entrance. Got some really neat things. All these paintings were actually done by inmates. I'll go in here first since there's less people. But look at all artwork done by inmates. This case is specifically dedicated to James Earl Ray. Here's his escape ladder he used to go over the wall. Pretty clever. And he actually, this is James Earl Ray's artwork too. He's got several pieces. Tattoo guns. Man, surely these caused all kinds of infections, I would think. Some marble dice, prison made, brass knuckles, nunchucks, a dagger confiscated. Weapon made from laundry bag with a weight inside it. Some homemade shanks. And over here in the corner is actually where you can see where that was cut out, where they made a shank out of this metal bed. All right, this is really cool. A shoe cut out for contraband. Had to be clever to sneak this stuff in. Marijuana pot pipe. Prison-made choking device. Look, cut out a section of a book. Hidden contraband. Same thing with the Bible. Bong pipe used for drugs. An 8-track tape. There's some more. Dominoes filled with marijuana. Another Bible cutout. You would think, oh, that's a good guy. He's wanting to walk the straight and narrow. He's carrying a Bible. Hairbrush to hide pills. Cooking spoon. Prison made syringe. And even soap. You could carve out the center of soap. This is cool. Here's a picture in front of some mines. But over here are actually names and dates. Bowman from 1900 to 1938, labor at Brushy Mountain Penitentiary, and this is how he died. Is it TB epidemic? This guy's shot, escaped attempt, stab wounds, accident in coal mine, stab wounds, died of the flu, falling slate in the mines, pulmonary, stomach ulcer, labor, pneumonia, tuberculosis. Look at it's just no natural causes on here. All these inmates, they just coal labor, coal labor, coal labor, coal miner, coal miner, coal miner. Crazy. This is the Brushy Mountain graveyard record. Sad. Some more artifacts. I think this is more, here's actually whipping post. Here's the wooden handle and strap. handcuffs. Boots. Inmate mining uniform. 1896 to 1967 when the mining stopped. And an aerial view of Brushy Mountain is actually across. Set an upside down cross, and I believe it was intentionally made that way. But here's like the back of the courtyard. You can see the wall and the guard towers and everything. But and over here's a concert, because now they do concerts and events here as well. But over here in this corner, where the chain link fence over here in the corner, where this ice machine is, this is where James Earl Ray made his escape. And apparently, from what the guide told us, she said that they watched and they knew that the guard in this tower fell asleep at 2:30 every day, like clockwork, 2:30. And they also had a guard that actually walked the wall. That's all they did, walk the wall, walk the wall. But this one day, at around, I'm assuming 2:30, while this guard was asleep and this guard that was walking the wall, he took a seat and they made their escape. Now, there was electric fence up here, and when James Earl Ray's first attempt to escape, he actually got shocked and got through back. But there was actually a 18-inch section that wasn't fenced, and that's where he squeezed through. But he didn't escape by himself. Another guy escaped with him. And so yeah, he made it across, and he was gone for 54 hours before the FBI, the TBI, the CIA, and all them found him 54 hours later up here in the mountains. So he didn't even get far in 54 hours. I think they said it was only a mile. He was only a mile away. Crazy. But yeah, I'm getting close over here to the corner. But yeah, see these? You couldn't even get near the wall. There was like a 10-foot gap where you'd have been electrocuted. And that probably explains all these things down here. And you can still see some of the barbed wire up here. Right here in this corner. Just set this up so you can get, like, I'm 5'7", idea how tall this really is. Let's see. Tall fence, tall wall. I don't know. I just wouldn't do the crime. It ain't worth the time. That's for sure. Alright folks, I think I'm done with the Brushy Mountain tour. We're gonna head down to the visitor center and get us a bite to eat at the warden's table. So we got us a bite to eat at the warden's table. And this is what we ordered. I just got the traditional burger with curly fries. He got the barbecue plate. But we're dining inside a cell. The warden's table here at Brushy Mountain Penitentiary. It's a visitor center and gift shop. And over here in the parking lot is actually Brushy Mountain Paddy Wagon. I believe this is what you call it, a paddy wagon. Watch your head. Sort of like a minibus transported prisoners. Department of Correction, end of the line. And I really think this is cool, this little sheriff badge.